Hey, how's it going guys? This is Dave 2D, and about a month ago I made a video on the Alienware Steam Machine, but it was kind of like an overview of the product. It wasn't a review or anything, it was kind of like a first look at what the Alienware Steam Machine was. But I've had it for a month now. I've been playing it pretty frequently, like basically every evening or weekend that I have a chance to, and I want to share with you guys my experiences with this device after having it for a month. So I thought I'd make a video. Here it is. Now, the defining feature of the Steam Machine is the controller. There was a lot of hype when the controller was being developed, but initial reviews of the controller were pretty mixed. Now, after using it for a month, I actually think it's a really good controller. It takes time to get used to it, so if you're coming from a PS4 or an Xbox controller, everything about the Steam controller feels wrong and it just feels unresponsive, but it's really just a matter of getting used to it. My favorite thing about it is the haptic feedback on it. There's a mechanism in here that feels really cool and it gives a unique character to the Steam controller. It's kind of hard to describe in words, but basically if you move your thumb around really quickly, it vibrates quickly, and if you move it around slowly, it vibrates slowly. So the feedback feels really deliberate and it just makes the controller feel really responsive when you're used to it. The 4 button inputs, like the A, B, X, Y buttons, those took a little bit longer to get used to. At first, I was really frequently hitting the wrong buttons, but after the second week, I got used to it and it's no longer an issue. But if you try it at first and your immediate thought is like, wow, these buttons are poorly placed, they're a little different, but you will get used to them over time. As for how well it controls games, it depends entirely on the game itself. So even after a month of playing shooters on this thing, I never got comfortable with it. I would do way better on a mouse and keyboard than the Steam controller. So a game like Team Fortress 2, it's an awesome game with the mouse and keyboard, and if you play the sniper with the controller, it's still playable, especially when you suck like I do and you just camp, but certain classes like the engineer, I just found it really hard to play because instead of having the wrench and the weapons on hotkeys, you have to cycle through them, and it was just really difficult for me to get used to the controller. And the same thing goes with MOBAs like Dota 2. It's playable, like way more playable than you might imagine with a controller, but gameplay still feels really crippled. And just as a courtesy, I played a lot of bot matches for the first week just to get used to the controller, and then I started playing some unranked matches with random players, and it was just a shit show. Like, everyone I played with was just like raging on me, and I'm pretty bad at Dota 2 to begin with, but using the controller just took it to the next level. It doesn't matter how comfortable you get with the controller, I think MOBAs were designed for a mouse and keyboard. Other games like adventure games or platformers or puzzle games, those play really well. So this is Mark of the Ninja, and it's a game that I've always liked, but I just found it really difficult to play with the keyboard, so I never got far in it. But playing on the Steam controller was really cool, and the whole game felt nice. I think platformers in general are going to play really nicely on the Steam controller because the directional controls are good and the inputs are just going to feel really snappy. And then there's Portal, or Portal 2 rather, and if you don't know what it is, Portal is a game that's kind of like a puzzle game that you play in first person. And despite having like the first person controls like a shooter, it plays really well. I think it actually plays almost as nicely as a keyboard and mouse. So basically, as long as your game doesn't need really snappy movements or directional controls, the controller is great. But if you do need really quick D-pad movements, you might have a bad time. The selection of SteamOS games is pretty good, and if you want to, you can stream non-SteamOS games from your PC or Mac. So this game is called Bastion, and I could have played this on SteamOS, but it's actually one of the few games I have that run on Mac, and it streamed really nicely from a MacBook Pro without any problems. Now obviously it runs at the performance of the host computer, so you need a decent computer to do this, but yeah, the tech works pretty well. The single player experience is pretty solid. Like, the controller isn't ideal for certain games, but the performance of the machine itself was always surprisingly good. Like, it's just a very fluid gaming experience at 1080p, even with the Core i3. Now, I also did some multiplayer gaming with some friends. They didn't want to be on camera, so I don't have footage, but playing split screen Awesomenauts, it's something I've never done before, and when you play with your friends in front of a TV, it's a really fun experience. There aren't a ton of games that have this kind of single screen multiplayer thing, but there's some really good ones out there. Okay, some closing thoughts. I think the big question is whether or not it's worth it to get the Alienware Steam Machine. And to answer that question, I have to bring up the sister product. So Alienware makes something called the Alienware Alpha, which is very similar in specs and price to the Steam Machine, except there's two differences. One, it's got an Xbox controller instead of the Steam controller. And secondly, it's running Windows instead of SteamOS. So the first reaction that I had was, why would anyone get this over the Alpha? Like, the Steam Machine is just a more constricted version. The Alpha has more potential. You can use it as like a secondary PC. You can play more games on it because it's not just restricted to SteamOS games. So why would people get the Steam Machine over the Alpha. And after using both of them pretty extensively, I can say one thing. It all boils down to simplicity. Traditionally, consoles are like very simple. You go up to your TV, turn on your console, and within seconds you're playing your game. At least with like Sega Genesis. Nowadays it's a little bit slower, but in general, very simple. With the Alpha, you're running a second layer of software that you kind of have to deal with before you can play your games, which is Windows. And for most people, I mean most people that would be watching my YouTube channel, that's not a big deal because you understand your computer pretty well. You just boot up your thing, deal with Windows before you deal with Steam, and that's fine. But there's a lot of people that just want a very simple Steam experience. They want to be able to play Steam games just like that, and that's what this thing offers. If you already have like a PC that has like Steam Machine, you have a big Steam library, I would definitely not get the Alpha because it's basically like a gimped version of your computer. This thing, however, gives you a very unique experience. It's not like a completely different gaming experience, but it's like a very different feel from just your computer in front of the TV. It's like a console. It's like a Steam console, and I think they did a really good job with that. But if you're looking for like a customizable gaming experience with like, you know, better frame rates and all that jazz, go with the Alpha or go with your PC. But if you're looking for something simple and just straight up boot up and go with the Steam Machine. It's a pretty cool device. That's the end of this review. Hope you guys liked it. Thumbs if you did, subs if you loved it. It's been nice. I'll see you guys next time.